ahead and proceed. Wanted to let you know that Mr. Taylor is attending to a personal matter that requires his immediate attention, and he is not able to be with us tonight. We will proceed with the agenda as published. So I'd like to, at this point, Ms. Wood, could you call to order the roll call?
Aye.
Aye.
Or aye.
Here or aye.
To view this meeting's presentation documents, please access Board Docs. The link to the Board Docs website can be found via the D38 website at lewispalmer.org on the Board of Education meetings webpage. To view the live stream video of this meeting, please go to the Lewis Palmer School District 38 YouTube page. Mr. Schwartz, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Certainly. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll go ahead and read it. We're going to move on to public comment. There is one time for public comment, and it is limited to 30 minutes. In an effort to allow all who wish to speak, the amount of time dedicated to each speaker will be dependent on the number of people who sign up, with the entire public comment period not exceeding 30 minutes. If 10 people or fewer sign up, each person will have 3 minutes to address the board. The sign-up sheet for public comment has been available since 5 o'clock in the Learning Center. The board respects the rights of the public to speak on matters concerning the operation of the schools. We believe that public comments that are critical of district staff, however, often cause unnecessary harm to those employees and to the education of our students. As a result, we prefer that members of the public share any criticism of employees in writing with the superintendent, who is responsible for supervising all staff, and then involving the board as necessary. If you choose instead to address a personnel issue publicly, please understand that the board does not endorse the comments of any speaker and reminds all who speak that they assume the risk of legal action by district employees in the event the affected employees believe any comments about them violate legal standards. Lastly, please keep in mind we may have K through 12 students in the audience or on the live stream. Please keep all comments appropriate to our audience. So we need to approve the agenda. I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second that. Ms. Phillips?
Any comments, questions, concerns? Ms. Wood?
Aye.
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 Excellent. We have 10 people who signed up to speak, so that makes our math easy. We do this evening have a timer up on the screen so that as you're talking, you can see that you'll have 3 minutes, so please do your very best so that you're done at that 3-minute mark or before. The first person is Kristen Scott. Yeah, come on up to the microphone. I think the standing one, is that right, Mr. Belcher?
Good evening. Would you like me to face you all? Yeah.
Just if you could speak directly into the mic, that'd be great,
Okay.
so we can hear you in the stream as well.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Kristen Scott. I'm a family medicine physician working for Centura Health Physician Group, Tri-Lakes Primary Care Office here in Monument. I'm here tonight to represent the docs in our office, myself, my colleague, Dr. Albina Gedalia, and our third colleague, Dr. Brian Baker, who's still working at the office. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. I wanted to let you know that we take care of approximately 6,000 patients across the Monument and Colorado Springs area, including many students, families, teachers, and staff in D38. We are here tonight to request your partnership in enhancing some of the COVID mitigation protocols that are currently in place. We've dedicated our careers to promoting wellness and as well as preventing disease through behavior modification, and we ask for your help to keep our community safe and to prevent disease in our community. What we are asking is for some enhancement of COVID mitigation protocols in order to reduce COVID-19 outbreak in schools, to keep students learning in person, which I think we all agree is essential, and to minimize transmission of the virus in the community. At the end of last week, as you probably know, El Paso County hospitals announced re-entry into the orange and red status, indicating strained capacity with resource limitations, putting us all at risk of not receiving the level of care for COVID or non-COVID related medical conditions that we may experience and that we've been privileged enough to expect excellent care. We feel the strain in our primary care offices as well as we try to take the burden off of our frontline colleagues in the hospital by trying to help our patients manage mild COVID without going to the hospital. As leaders in the community with authority to help avoid an escalating crisis, we urge the D38 board to be proactive instead of reactive in taking increased measures to decrease the spread of the disease within our schools, which will in turn reduce transmission in the community and preserve our healthcare resources. First, we request that you strongly encourage your staff and teachers to be vaccinated by keeping them informed about the status of the virus and vaccine, as well as by offering incentives to obtain the vaccine, such as financial bonuses. Equally as important, we're urging you to reconsider your position on masking in order to increase the chances for students to continue in-person learning. Did you know that per El Paso County Board of Health and CDC guidelines, a student who is identified as a close contact of a positive COVID case who is masked and the other student is masked may not need to quarantine? This can preserve our in-person learning if both parties are wearing masks. In alignment with pediatric and public health experts, including those at our children's hospital, as well as updated guidelines last week from the CDPHE and of course the American Academy of Pediatrics and the CDC, we request that masking be required indoors as well as for students as well as for staff. If a mandate is not enacted, then we request you stand behind the promise to encourage mask use and to promote and ensure a supportive and welcoming environment for those who choose to wear a mask. Unfortunately, we have not seen or heard about this currently being reported, the promotion of this in our schools,
Dr. Scott,
and that's
we're over 3
discouraging.
minutes.
We request that you lead by example.
Dr.
and
Scott, I'm sorry, we have a limited time this
Okay.
evening, but we
Thank you.
appreciate your comments.
Thank you. I just ask that you encourage to institute the layers that have been promised and that worked well for us last year to save our kids' in-person learning in our community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ian Atwell.
Hello, board members. My name is Ian Atwell. I had one kid go through this district from 6th to 12th grade, and I have another currently in 9th grade at LPHS. This is our 12th year in the district. At the risk of opening myself and my family to harassment, I am here to personally ask you for a district-wide mask mandate. I have my own reasons, which I will address soon, but I am also here to represent everyone who is at risk in this district who cannot attend board meetings or who is afraid to raise their voice. As infections from the Delta variant grow across Colorado and the U.S., our schools are increasingly becoming the transmission vector. While I firmly believe in-person learning is important, as socialization is such a huge part of growing up and especially adolescence, doing so without masking puts all in-person learning at risk. Look to our very own Prairie Winds Elementary School for an example. Classrooms and hallways do not provide enough space for social distancing, and a single infected individual can unknowingly spread their infection to hundreds of their classmates in a single day. Masks have been proven to drastically reduce transmission rates in multiple scientific and epidemiological studies. Actual studies like these, published in scientific journals and peer-reviewed rather than posted on YouTube. Simply put, school districts with mask mandates have lower infection rates. My 9th grader has underdeveloped lungs due to being born 11 weeks premature. Well, we have taken every precaution possible on our end, including keeping them home all last year, vaccinating everyone in our household, and now imploring them to wear their mask at school, which we can only hope they do. There is still a significant possibility of a breakthrough infection. They are also a surviving twin, which means I have already suffered the loss of a child once, and I would not wish it on my worst enemy. We owe it to our community, for every single at-risk child, parent, or grandparent, to take every precaution available in order to keep in-person learning active without putting lives at risk. This is the same reason we have mandated vaccinations against polio, diphtheria, tetanus, pertussis, measles, mumps, rubella, chickenpox, and hepatitis B. Every single one of those is already required to attend school because of the public good they do. Finally, I have heard hearsay that this board has received anonymous threats over the possibility of mask mandates. If this is true, I cannot think of a more cowardly, selfish, or anti-American thing for a person to do, and I beg you to be stronger than they are, to show some resolve in doing the right thing, and to mandate masks for all students and faculty immediately. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Atwell.
I'll leave these here. If anybody would like to read them.
Next, we have Ms. Kimberly Drozdiak. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, D38 board members and Dr. Casey Summers. As a parent of a first grader, I am proud to be in a district that sees the value in freedom and is still standing strong against the power grab that is taking place across our country. Let me be clear, fear is the source for division, and we all know too well from history that if we can instill fear, division is how governments can take control. Let me also be clear, masks, forced vaccinations, and other heavy-handed power grabs are not about health, but about compliance. If the narrative didn't fit the leftist agenda, you will be censored, fired, bullied, and shamed, to only mention a few. This in itself proves that our current political climate is using its position of power to make the people comply. As long as I can stand, I will fight for our God-given right to freedom, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This to me means I choose what is best for me and my family. I will never tell my daughter I sat back and let this happen without speaking God's truth, with eyes to see and ears to hear. To start, masks are proven ineffective and are simply a sham to a false security. If you read on the back of any box of masks, it states that they do not protect against viruses. We have to ask ourselves then, if they put that on the back of the box, does a cloth mask protect better? Even Fauci, who refuses to make his mind up on what so-called facts he wants to speak to that day, he offered to say 2 masks will help than 1. When does it stop? He refuses to even, and when he is pressed to make a decision, he refuses to even answer them, so he doesn't even follow his own science. Science is based on fact, not opinion, and we sure get a lot of opinion, but facts are what you see on the back of a mask box and in the censored materials that many doctors that stand against this government right now aren't allowed to say. Also, it is unfathomable to me as a woman with a master's in counseling how the health department can ignore the other side effects of these mandates. Suicide is up, and truth seekers know the development of children at critical ages, specifically in elementary, are based on interaction, body language, and facial expression. To cover faces and force them to breathe and hazardous waste our body naturally expels stops the fundamental ability to children to learn properly in the way God intended us to interact, in person, with expression and compassion. This is definitely political and driven by financial incentives via the American Rescue Plan Act. School districts are being used to enforce these agendas by just following the rules. The districts take money from the government, so they must comply or lose money. May I again say, it isn't about health, but compliance. As our elected officials, you do have the power to say no, and you currently are. You are our community, or you know our community. You know we are freedom fighters with a lot of military among us, and we must follow what is best for our kids. The data shows that in person, no masks, and letting parents decide what is right for their own family is the only solution.
Ms. Rajda,
This response
we've reached
trends.
3 minutes, so we need to.
I appreciate it. Well, my husband was a Marine. He fought for this country, and God bless all of you for standing for freedom.
Thank you for your comment. Ms. Kim Walsh?
Good evening, Casey Summers, Dr. Summers, and board members. I want to sincerely thank you for your service to our kids and our community this year. I'm so proud to live in a community that values our God-given freedoms and allows parents to decide what is best for our children. It is my hope that you will continue to allow parents to decide what is best for their families. We currently have 2 kids in the school district, and I've seen a noticeable change in them this year compared to last year, especially in our oldest, who's now a freshman at LPHS. He's laughing and joking more and just overall happier. I can see it. I truly believe that this is a direct correlation to the mask mandate being lifted. I don't know how anyone can say that masks don't negatively affect our children. As a parent, I witness it firsthand. I know that my kids are happier and more excited for school like they once were. We're in a critical time in history. The decisions that we make on a daily basis will determine the future of our kids, our grandkids, our great-grandkids. It's our job to recognize when the government entities make laws, mandates, etc., that cross a line, and we have to decide what we're going to do about it. If our God-given freedoms are being violated, we must make a stand. Thank you again for standing on the side of freedom. We support you. We thank you for doing what's right. And what you're doing today is making a difference for our kids and for future generations. So thank you so much.
Thank you for your comment. Ms. Jackie Burhans?
Hi, I'm Jackie Burhans, and I'm going to talk about a different topic. I wanted to express my disappointment that the board has tackled modifying the controversial subjects policy. It's on your agenda today. I had read it before and thought it was one of the best things I'd ever read, and can't see that it actually needed to be amended. The first paragraph that's new sounds great, but the points that are made after that are directly addressing issues that those who want to raise false controversies have raised about critical race theory. As your statement to the public said, critical race theory is not taught in D38 or in any K through 12 school. So I don't see why you would modify your controversial policy to address ills that come from that theory, which is not being taught in the school. Now, maybe the thinking is this will placate the people who are complaining. I don't think it does that. I think it emboldens them to ask for the next thing and the next fake controversy, and to take your time and attention away from that which is truly important. They are not placated, in fact. And what the other thing that it does is it takes your time and it takes your attention. It wastes your time and attention. It occurs to me that you have several very important things before you as a board and as an administration. You have programs you've had to shut down due to lack of staffing, classes that high school students can't take anymore because the teacher isn't here anymore. And you have this here pandemic going on that obviously you have some tough decisions to make, and you've heard from others on what they think about what you're doing or should be doing. So to spend the time and the leadership to address this non-issue is a waste of time and leadership you should be spending on something else. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Stephen Walsh?
Hi, good evening, Dr. Summers, board. Thank you for the chance to speak in front of you. First of all, I just want to say thank you very much for listening to the community before about the masks, about the leaving it up to parents' choice. I think that's an important decision to maintain, okay? So really the big thing is we want to stand with you, we want to support you, so we just want you to keep on doing the right thing. I wasn't going to talk about the controversial topics. I do, however, agree with the policy update that I completely agree that we should discuss controversial topics. We just should not force it upon that is in fact true. We want our kids to enjoy different points of view, different perspectives, but never to tell them that one is absolutely correct versus the other one. So anyway, I won't take up too much of your time. Thank you for letting me speak. Thank you. Keep keep fighting the good fight for our kids. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Mr. Mike Kennedy?
Good evening. My name is Mike Kennedy. Thanks for the opportunity to speak tonight. I have a few comments that I'd like to make about the state of the district's COVID response. I'm concerned with the lack of preparation or protection in place for this school year. Last year, there were mandates with masks, cohorting, staggered lunches, and recesses. And we only had one quarantine period in my daughter's first grade class at the end of November last year. She didn't even catch a cold in the entire school year, which is unheard of for a child that small. This was an amazing and well thought out response, I thought. This year, however, there's nothing like that in place, and we're seeing outbreaks in the district. It seems evident to me and obvious that changes need to be made immediately. 2 weeks ago, we received a notice from the school that a child tested positive in my child's classroom, but we didn't need to worry as our child was not considered a close contact. The inherent ridiculousness of this comment spurred me to reach out to the school and the district to ask what I can do to keep my child from becoming a close contact. Sure enough, the next day she tested positive with symptoms. Positive for COVID, that is. Without any guidance from the school or the district, we removed her from the school, followed county health quarantine regulations, and asked her teacher and principal if her class would quarantine or if there was any schoolwork or offline opportunities to keep her from falling behind. The answer was no. We were just in her classroom the week prior for back to school night, and the desks are pushed together in pods of 6. Anybody can relate to their experience in elementary school. It's pretty common. But was the same inaccurate email sent to those parents, I wonder, about not being a close contact with my child, as their neighbors are absolutely within a foot of each other and close contacts? Last week, the superintendent sent a message about swiftly mitigating these recent outbreaks. What swift action was taken, I wonder? Was this just a message to appease the families that were not impacted? I know that my child's class, the site of one of these outbreaks, didn't quarantine, and the only action that was taken was by me and my family to keep my child out of school and from keeping other kids from catching it. We place complete trust in the district and the school to protect our children. What are we as parents supposed to do when we send our children to school completely unprotected and the school sends false information back? It is like we are sending them into battle without armor, and there is no action being taken to protect them from the entity that we are supposed to trust to do so. And personally, I'd like to say this isn't about politics. This isn't about God. This is about our children and keeping them safe when they need to get an education so that they can be functioning members of society. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Albina Gadalia? Gedalia, pardon me.
Hi, my name is Dr. Albina Gedalia. I work in the same clinic as Dr. Scott, and I have been a local physician here for 6 years, working at Tri Lakes Primary Care. So I want to address, first of all, an earlier comment, because something kept coming up about freedom. Regarding the freedom to not mask, the best quote I heard is, "Freedom ends when harm to others begins." And that is so important because it's not about, it should never be about personal choice or choosing, something for your child or something for another child. It's choosing what is best for our community, what is best for all of our children and the teachers and parents, not to mention, kids with other comorbidities that make them at risk for having worse COVID symptoms. And by the way, no one will have personal choice if they have rationed care, which is what's currently going on in Alaska and Idaho. So patients who are not vaccinated are not necessarily on the top of the list of who receives care. And that's horrible. That should never be that way. But unfortunately, that's what they've come down to. So I'm a parent to a 6 and 8-year-old at Bear Creek and have been very frustrated about the lack of protection for our vulnerable children who are not yet eligible to receive the COVID vaccine. I cannot wait to get my kids vaccinated because as a physician, I understand the safety of the vaccine. I understand how it works. I understand that vaccines actually don't usually cause long-term side effects, despite a lot of my patients' concerns. But unfortunately, I don't have that choice. And there are no vaccine mandates for our teachers and no mask mandates for teachers who have not been vaccinated. Even though it's encouraged, I have yet to see teachers at our elementary wear masks who are not vaccinated, which is really frustrating to me as a parent of vulnerable kids and as a physician. And also, I'm getting really tired of this. For the last year and a half, I've tried to be positive, try to be a leader in the community, but I feel like my voice as a physician is not always being heard, and my expert advice is not being followed despite years of book work, classwork, and clinical experience. I have my children wear masks, which, by the way, they have no emotional issues with. They're very used to it, but they can't keep it on all the time. You know, there's times where they'll eat or they'll be playing close with friends outside, in which case vaccinating the teachers becomes more important. And by the way, Mr. Superintendent, making people wear masks is not political, as you had said in your email. I feel like it's quite the other way around. There's a lot more politics, a lot more talk of freedom, and especially—
Doctor, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we're at the 3-minute time limit.
Okay, I just want to say that the Delta variant is way worse than what we had last year, and yet we're not doing anything about it this year. So, very frustrating.
Thank you for your comment. Ms. Melinda Zark.
I want to address a few things that have been said that are actually shocking to me. First of all, Israel is super vaxxed. They're one of the most vaccinated countries in the world. Their COVID situation is exploding. Second of all, the current vaccines don't even address, they're not even formulated to address the Delta variant. So it's concerning to me that we have health professionals coming to you to advise you with what seems to be a lack of understanding about what vaccines do. Okay, it's very concerning to me. I have lost a lot of confidence in our medical community over this. If you look up online, the existing vaccines do not address the Delta variant, and yet we have health professionals acting as though unvaccinated people who come in with the Delta variant have broken some sort of social trust. How can you criticize people for not being vaccinated for the variant that's infecting everyone? I'm actually here to address also the crowing that's been going on over what appears to be a disproportionate number of school closures among schools that are not masked schools. And I wanted to highlight what the doctor brought up, where she said, if there's an infection in a school and the people around the person that were infected were not masked, you have everybody involved is expected to quarantine. That's going to result in more school closures and more quarantine events in districts that don't have masks. So when you see headlines in the media about school closures in D49 or in Dougco before they had masks, please keep in mind that the threshold for what requires a quarantine is way lower when a school district like ours doesn't mask. That means that you could have just as many infections in a masked district, but you're going to have fewer quarantine events. So I appreciate you listening, and thanks again for the CRT, or whatever you want to call it, the policy change. I think it's brilliant, because while maybe we don't have certain doctrines or philosophies being taught here currently, I appreciate the steps you're taking to cut off occasion from them which desire occasion and are looking to actually politicize the classroom. So thank you.
Thank you for your comment. And our last commenter, Jamie Glover.
Hi there, my name is Jamie Glover. I recognize some of you guys. Good to see you. I am a family physician. I have a private practice in Monument. I have 2 children in Lewis Palmer School District, a boy, Andrew, who's a junior in high school, and a girl, Ellie, who's a freshman at Lewis Palmer. I ask you, our school district, to use any resources given to maintain in-person learning. Recently, my son had a mild virus. I didn't know if it was COVID. He is vaccinated. Breakthrough cases are possible. So I wanted to get him a rapid test. Yeah, not perfect, but I guide myself with the principle of net benefit versus net detriment, which changes in any given season. I ask you to keep net benefit, net detriment in mind when you refuse resources like free tests from the state. I found out the school did not take advantage of that, so I couldn't test him that way. I tested him in other ways. You know, what if it was false negative and he went to school with COVID? Yeah, a little bit of that's going to happen, but it's going to help hold down the cases, and I really know we need to preserve in-person learning. I do just want to make some comments about what COVID is like in our community. I had the most cases this past week ever, way more than last November, in my own patients, 5 of whom were high risk. One of whom, for example, this is just to kind of give you what's out there, you know. Schoolboy brought it home. Did he get it from school? Probably, but can I be sure? No. Gave it to grandma, who went into the ICU last week, who is on a ventilator now, and gave it to mom, who's high risk with type 1 diabetes. She's a single mom. She has another child. Grandma and grandpa are integral. They live together. Grandma, grandpa, mom, and the 2 kids. No dad in the picture. So that affects schooling. I just want you to realize when a child brings it home and gives it to a family like that, to his grandma, who's definitely a part of who takes care of him, and to his mom. So you just need to consider like how the whole community is affected, or connected, I should say. Another one, I don't know if he got it from his grandchild or not, but one of my patients with heart disease and diabetes, he got it. Now he has grandchildren that live right down the street from them. Again, very connected family with the generations, but he's also a repairman. So did he get it from one of his jobs, or did he get it from his grandchild? I don't know. But I'm doing everything I can to keep these people out of the hospital. Monoclonal antibody, dexamethasone, azithromycin, whatever it's needed, you know. But I just want you to know there are doctors in the community who have very broad educations. We actually understand the biases in studies, research, garbage in, garbage out studies. Which studies on ivermectin mean anything?
Dr.
The 5 that
Glover,
are
we're at
out
3
there.
minutes.
So
Dr.
please
Glover.
listen to us. Please listen to the physicians that have the broadest educations you could know about, and please just consider net benefit versus net detriment, and know that changes over time. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Please know that the Board of Education appreciates everybody taking time to come and comment in person. Thank you for being here this evening. And we will move on now to board member comments. I'm just going to start at the end of the line there, Mr. Clausen, with you.
Thank you, Ms. Phillips. I'd like to welcome our friends from Monument Academy. It's good to have you here tonight. We're looking forward to seeing your presentation. It's good to be back in school and to have our kids attending. I've had the opportunity to attend several events, and I want to express our appreciation to our teachers specifically and all the team members that make it possible. And that's all I have, Ms. Phillips. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clausen. Mr. Schwartz,
No comments this evening, thank you.
Ms. Upchurch.
I have a lot of comments this evening. First, I do want to say thank you for everyone for coming out and speaking. Every voice, from the smallest to the biggest, has a seat at the table, and having so many voices at the table can sometimes make navigation a little bumpy and sometimes overwhelming and even sometimes unpredictable. But it's the best way to be comprehensive, and it's the right thing to do. So thank you all for speaking up. I would also like to humbly say thank you to our community of stakeholders. I haven't said this yet, but I'm honored to be able to serve for another 4 years. We've done a lot of great work, as I said before, at the district, and I look forward to capitalizing on all that momentum. Our superintendent, Dr. Summers, his leadership team, it's hard, let me try that again. I look forward to capitalizing all. Can you guys hear me? Oh, okay. Sorry, I can't hear myself. Our superintendent, Dr. Summers, and his leadership team has generated, and all the good we're doing for District 38. And while I'm proud of all that we've accomplished, I'm eager to continue working on the board towards our goals, towards implementing our long-range planning, committing to policy development, and leading through policy, and engaging our stakeholders and community members in conversations that ultimately does help guide board governance and goals. I was recently asked by a member of the press if I feel that the fact that Mr. Taylor and myself will retain our positions on the D38 Board of Education without contention is a sign of apathy or a lack of community interest. And especially when we've tried so hard to engage our community, and or if I feel that the community already feels that the existing board is performing in the district's best interest. And here's my perspective. As a board member and as a citizen, I continue to be engaged in our community, our schools, and various organizations within the community, and I actually receive a lot of feedback and communication from our diverse stakeholders. So I would say we all do. And I think our Lewis Palmer D38 stakeholders, our students, our staff, our parents, our business owners, and taxpayers are very engaged in our district. And I know there was interest from other parties to seek election to the board. But the fact that ultimately no one else submitted paperwork speaks to me that our community, for the most part, feels that we already are working in the best interest of the district and that we are acting as good stewards to our community. And I see that as a nod in our community, and it also shows to me that us as a community are eager to see our district move forward. And nevertheless, as servants, we will not rest on our laurels, and there's always room for improvement and more work to be done. And I'm excited and I'm motivated. And it's truly a privilege to serve with my fellow board members that are seated here tonight, and Mr. Taylor, who couldn't be with us tonight. And I have a great deal of respect for the voices, perspectives, the time, the talent, the thoughtfulness, the dedication to serve, the grace and the grit, and the thoughts from each of you guys. So Ms. Phillips, Mr. Schwartz, Mr. Clausen, Dr. Summers, Ms. Woods, and the rest of the team, thank you for investing all that you are into this organization. To our teachers, our staff, our parents, guardians, and grandparents, and families, students past and present, thank you for being the heartbeat that keeps this district great. And thank you for caring and advocating. I also want to say thank you to our Assistant Superintendent, Amber Westein, for the comprehensive presentation you did at our work session on Strategy 2, which I believe you'll be sharing tonight. And you have a strong dream team with you. So this is good stuff, and I'm excited to see the momentum. Speaking of engagement, I attended the live county commissioners meeting on the 14th, where the new Red Rocks Acres development was discussed. And I also attended a meeting at the Woodmore Barn last Wednesday, where the new Jackson Creek Junction development by Classic Homes was discussed. And both discussions, along with the controversy that surrounded the distribution centers on Old Denver Highway and the talking points that were being presented, made me realize that our community of taxpayers sometimes receive differing information when it comes to how these developments affect the district and what role the district plays and what authority the district has in it all. And it's been a while since we've had a presentation to the school board of a comprehensive look at what developments are coming in, how does that affect us, what's the difference between donated land and cash in lieu of, and how do schools get built, and how does Gallagher affect all of that with property taxes. And so I was wondering, or I think it would be a good idea if at some point we do another presentation, be it through a board work session or a community engagement, where we have that discussion and share out what does it mean with all these developments coming into our community here in the Tri-Lakes area. So I know Mr. Taylor's not here tonight, but I would like to hopefully we could see that on a future agenda. During that county commissioner meeting, they also talked about, there was a large group of healthcare providers that were speaking against masking students, and it's interesting to see the difference in perspectives. And there was also presentations. September is Suicide Awareness Month, and to me, suicide doesn't just stop in September. Awareness happens all year long, and There was a presentation that was made and by our Dr. Leon Kelly, our county coroner, and Susan Whelan, who's with the Public Health Department. And there is a meeting, it's called the Suicide Prevention Collaborative of El Paso County, and they'll be providing an overview of the activities that the collaborative has done, the outcomes, the current programs, and the future plans to reduce the rate of suicide in El Paso County. And it'll be an opportunity to join the efforts as community members. It's a free event. It's open to the public. It's September 28th at 10 a.m., and you can register on Zoom. And you can find the information to that on the county health webpage, so I would encourage everybody to go to that health page, and if you're interested in that. What I found interesting was the rate of suicides in El Paso County overall is down by 1, but the suicide rate amongst teens in El Paso County, we haven't seen this many teens since 2016, before El Paso County became more actively involved in creating programs for awareness and prevention. And there is a very important phone number that I would hope that everybody would write down. And that number is 1-844-493-8255, or text TALK to 3825. So just keep that in mind, because you never know if it's your own child or somebody else's child or a loved one. Interestingly enough, in El Paso County, the average age is 42. So I would just encourage everybody to have that number on hand. And then I also attended a couple of Chamber of Commerce events, and the support and pride that our business community has here in D38, it opens doors for our district to collaborate and opens doors for students. And if anyone ever wonders just what kind of spirit and pride we have in this community, I would suggest you attend the Motown Showdown between PR and LP on a Friday night football game. It's every year. It's just to see that excitement and the spirit behind it. And I appreciate that the town of Monument recognized our coaches and our D38 leadership during that. So another opportunity, one last thing, another opportunity on how to see how much this community comes together in collaboration is during the Empty Bowls Dinner and Silent Auction, which is the evening of Wednesday, September 29th from 5 to 7:30. It's hosted at Lewis Palmer High School, hosted by Monument Hills Kiwanis, and it benefits the Tri-Lakes Cares. Tickets are available through Kiwanis and through multiple businesses here in our school district. So that's a lot to put out, but that's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Upchurch. I don't have any board comments per se, especially following all of that information, but I would add that we have one set of district parents and a family that has begun a Special Olympics team here in the Tri-Lakes area, and just launched a website through the Tri-Lakes Chamber Area of Commerce. Mm-hmm. So if you would like information on that Special Olympics team, I think that's one aspect of our community that everybody can rally around during this time, and it is a win-win-win. So, and it's a great opportunity. If you have a student who would like to participate, if you have students, or if as adults you would like to volunteer, they need plenty of help over the next year getting started. There are lots of ways to plug in with that organization. So that's all I have, and I was going to move on with the agenda to the superintendent update.
Am I on? Oh, that is much louder. Thank you. Okay, Ms. Wood, if you would please just bring up the update slides. That's great. I'll just drive from here. So I did prepare just a brief presentation to keep me and us on track as we summarize where we've been as we started the year, and looking specifically through the lens of our strategic plan update. Wanted to do just a quick August recap, including mention of our August 13th board retreat, where we spent a majority of the time really aligning our focus and efforts toward our work in the policy governance arena, as well as updating our priority focus in each area. So as you know, we will be, over the first 5 months of the school year, deep diving each of our 5 priorities. In August, we did a deep dive priority 1 presentation. And then just to bring to your attention, the executive leadership team, the new team, did what we refer to as a roadshow beginning August 11th, the first day of return for teachers. And we spent time going to each of our school sites, introducing ourselves just so our folks know a little bit more about who we are, and aligning our focus back to our strategic plan. And the thing I wanted to illuminate from that work through that roadshow was the feedback that we've received from our school site teams, with the prompt being, what opportunities do you see within the D38 strategic plan for this upcoming 21-22 school year? So I'm going to show that to you a couple of different ways. The first is the thought exchange tool that we utilize develops what we refer to as a word cloud. What you can see here is the words that were most often referenced are the ones that appear the loudest or the biggest, if you will. So you can see some of those themes that are emerging as you look at the very top there: compensation, looking at how we're supporting our people, how we continuously improve, how we work to value both our staff as well as every child every day, and a more sequential or top 3, if you will, thought summation. These are not all of the thoughts. These were just the thoughts that were most pronounced in terms of those top 3. So you can see alignment to strategic plan item 3, again, valuing our people and increasing compensation for staff members. That was repeatedly the most referenced thought that came forward. In terms of work around a world-class education, meaning including opportunities for students to shine outside of the traditional academic realm, including, and not limited to, band, choir, orchestra, theater, etc. Students need to have something that keeps them going every day, particularly as we continue to work in response to everything that we went through, or our students went through last year, and how we continue to move forward. And then you'll see a theme that relates both to priority 5 as well as how that applies throughout all of our priorities in terms of communication and transparency, so that we can continue to build trust with the community. So just wanted to, again, share that with you so that you knew, at least from our staff perspective, what a lot of the feedback was in relationship to that prompt, and how we'll continue to build these themes and thoughts into our work going forward. So just a quick overview of where we're at so far in September. We have spent time aligning our school-based plans, or providing support for our school-based plans in alignment to D38 strategic plan priorities, specifically 1, 2, and 3. So as you hear more of that work taking place, you'll see a lot of embedded layers of support and common terminology and goals with respect to how those priorities line up. We had our first district-wide PLC, or Professional Learning Community Workday, Friday, September 3rd. That was extremely helpful for our teachers to review data, to set learning goals, to continue with their collaborative work at each of our school sites. So we're grateful to our families and our community for the partnership that we work together to achieve that extended learning time, or professional learning time, for our staff. As you recall, back in our work session on September 7th, we did the initial deep dive into priority 2, and we'll have an abbreviated version of that same topic that will be shared this evening from our assistant superintendent, including a deeper dive into our data, some goal target setting, and again, that additional update. Referencing priority 5, we have both Ms. Phillips and Ms. Upchurch, who are points of contact for priority 5, and so we spent some time back on September 10th reviewing some of our previous priority work, and then sharing out where we're at with our branding update, both for our logo, our mission, vision, our strategic plan, and some next steps there. So we're looking forward to bringing that out to the community as we continue forward over the next several weeks. And then just a little bit on a priority 4 connection, so related to fiscal transparency and monitoring. And those efforts, last Wednesday, we were able to spend some time with other school districts up at the School Finance Project, their inaugural campaign to collaborate with, again, representatives. So kudos to Mr. Schwartz and Mr. Taylor for spending some time up there with our Chief Financial Officer and myself. We are going to be spending more time looking at how all of this aligns in D38 through the relaunch of a financial advisory committee, which I'll go into a little bit more detail here, and then a little bit later this evening, Kitty will share our ESSER 3 survey and what that work looks like forthcoming. So the Financial Advisory Committee, this is something that in the past I think has been referred to as an audit committee. We have had different versions of this committee at work, but we want to reestablish and set the tone for the function of this committee, which includes establishing the credibility of our business and finance operations, looking to develop more of a communication ambassador approach to our community as a whole with interested individuals, continuing to advance our district's strategic plan priorities through the fiscal lens. And we see an opportunity to also provide updates to various constituents and groups as we move forward. For example, our District Advisory and Accountability Committee, or even at upcoming board meetings. Those would be some different ways to get involved and to make sure that the information is shared appropriately across the community. So we will be looking at composing this committee. We're targeting about an 8 to 10 community member push. There will be an opportunity for staff, parents, varied community members, for example, could come from a business, legal, military perspective, or other interested voices. And this will be a committee that will be co-led or facilitated by our CFO, Kitty Overton, and our board treasurer, Ron Schwartz. And additional details, we actually will be launching the application process a little bit later this week. And then we will be doing quarterly meetings with the first meeting to be scheduled by the end of October. Mr. Schwartz, anything else you'd want to offer up as we're...
No, I think you covered it. Great.
Very good. Thank you. Obviously, a lot of communication updates, just a reminder of where we've been thus far in September, related to what our Board of Education work is, different events, and so on and so forth. I do want to just take a moment because I did not prepare a specific COVID slide in this update, but I do want to just mention what I believe we are continuing to share with our community, which is we hear you, and we understand that there is a continuum of advocacy that is certainly out there. We are on record with what our current plan is, as it is consistent with the requirements of Department of Public Health, and if there are changes that are made to that plan, of course, we will be communicating those as we go forward. And unless there's more specific questions that the board may have for me on that topic, I think I'm going to at this point at least just acknowledge that and leave it at that, at least for the moment. And then, of course, we will continue to post regular Board of Education meeting updates, including an update following this meeting that will be forthcoming. We didn't have formal student recognition that was on our agenda for this evening. And we might be missing a picture here of these three fantastic students, but I did want to make some mention of 3 Lewis Palmer High School students who were selected as National Merit Scholarship semifinalists. And nationwide semifinalists represent less than 1% of our U.S. high school seniors. So congratulations to Anna, I think it's Ick, if I mispronounce, Icky, thank you, Davis Saunders and Allison Sobers. And I apologize that picture is not quite showing up. We also have a student who was recognized as KOAA's Athlete of the Week, Palmer Ridge's Madison Wilson, who's helped our Bears volleyball team, I believe, win a 4A state championship as a junior and is already receiving quite a bit of attention as a senior. And just wanted to mention that we have several outstanding athletic performances, and really proud of all of our students, our coaches, our families for how we're supporting all of that work that's occurring thus far this year. And then just a quick highlight of some events and some partnerships that you may have heard about. On August 22nd, in partnership with Tri-Lake Social Emotional Wellness Coalition, otherwise known as SO, there was an event that was hosted at Limbach Park where students were able to elevate their own voices, and there was just a great opportunity to share those perspectives and having open conversations, so we're excited about that work, particularly in light of what you also brought up a little bit earlier, Ms. Upchurch, in relationship to National Suicide Awareness Month and the important topic that is mental health always, and how that affects our kids and others in the community. And then just a highlight, there's been several events that have occurred around fundraising at this time of year, and one in particular is a real successful Run for Hope, which was hosted this last Saturday. So this event raised more than $45,000, and those are funds that are going to benefit D38, D20, and Sources of Strength. This was hosted by the Ascent Church, which, as a additional kudos, was also the Tri-Lakes Chamber of Commerce Nonprofit Selection of the Year. So really grateful for that partnership and the support that we have from many of our community providers. And I believe that takes me to the end of the presentation. Any questions that I can speak to before we move into the rest of our agenda?
Seeing none, I have a fellow board member. I think we will move on, but I've maybe lost my microphone. We will now move on to C1, the Monument Academy Charter School Annual Report. And we'll invite up Dr. Merlin Holmes.
Give us a second. I think we've got a little...
Am I on now?
There you go.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for having us this evening. I have with me tonight our board president, Ryan Graham, and our chief financial officer, Mark Brocklehurst. For those who haven't met me, I am Merlin Holmes. I'm the new chief operating officer at Monument Academy. Very pleased to be in that position. My family and I moved to Monument in 2003, and so it feels to me like, even though I've been working at various places around the state, this feels like coming home. 3 of my wife and I's children graduated from Lewis Palmer High School, and so we're glad to be part of the district and enjoying a great partnership. I want to thank Dr. Summers and his staff initially for the great partnership that I know they've been working on for a couple years with my predecessor, Christina Herrera. And we just appreciate the partnership that we have with this district. Not all authorizers create partnerships, and we just appreciate what you're doing here very much. Our annual report you have in your packet, I believe, and so I'm not going to read that to you in the sake of brevity, and I don't want to be too boring this evening, so we'll skip all that piece of it. But I did want to highlight just a couple of things that I think go in that report. Obviously, the biggest thing to report, overcoming the COVID pandemic, and some people feel like we survived that. Some people feel like we thrived very well during that, and that's subject to personal opinion, as we've heard tonight. But we have done well in that process, and I think our students are still continuing to grow and learn. One of the things that I do want to emphasize in that report, we do track our student performance through the NWEA test like the district does, and we value that, and we very much look at student growth and how we're progressing and making sure that our students are learning the things that they need to learn, and that's very important to us. Another thing that I want to highlight is that our enrollment does continue to go up about 100 to 125 students a year now that we've added the East Campus for our middle school and high school students, and that increased last year and is increasing again this year as part of that growth process. Our middle school athletics had a very successful year, both from a participation standpoint and from a performance standpoint, and that part of our activities is going really well. As some of you may know, we have an orchestra program at our school, and so we do have a lot of participation in the arts and music as well. And then the last thing I want to do is just to reemphasize again how much we appreciate the partnership that we have with this district. And We work under the auspices and authority of this district and this board, and we appreciate the support that you give and the professional camaraderie that we're developing. And then I guess I'll leave the rest of it up to you if you have questions, comments, things you'd like to say.
I'll ask my fellow board members first. Do you have any questions or comments? Go ahead, Ms. Upchurch. Talk loudly.
Two comments. First, I want to send my condolences to you and the MA community for the loss of Mr. Richards. I know he was he had a huge impact on many students that have traveled through those hallways, so Art's very sorry. I also noticed that you guys have been working on your policy reviews like us, so good for you on that, because I think that that's part of how we govern is through policy governance, and that's our guidepost, so good job.
Any other board member questions, comments for Monument Academy?
So I may be on. Ms. Upchurch, you see how this works?
I am on. Oh, now I'm on.
Congratulations on your growth. Also, our condolences. We knew that family personally as well. It's tough. As you continue to grow and the community continues to grow, and you heard the comments made about future development, the good news is this is a wonderful place to live. Bad news is people figured it out. The good news is if you own property here, that's not such a bad thing. However, we need to educate these kids and make them quality members of our societies. So you're growing, you intend, I think, as a team to increase your capacity. Can you give us a feel for what kind of capacities you think MA will be able to provide the communities will continue to grow going forward, maybe today, tomorrow, in 3 to 5 years, et cetera?
Just to give you an idea, currently on our East Campus, we have almost 500 students between 6th grade and 10th grade. And we're working on the phase 2 of that build out because we're almost at capacity at that facility now with the students we have.
Yeah.
So we're hoping to build out phase 2 hopefully by 2 years from now, that'll be ready for students. And then that campus would have a capacity of around 800 to 900 students. The high school would be roughly 400 to 500 students, or about half the size of the other district's high schools.
So maybe 80% in the secondary program. 400 on top of 500.
Yeah, we're probably closer to 65% of where we would eventually be. And, part of that's always driven by interest.
Yep.
And
Yep.
as a school of choice, it's part of how things work.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Try it one more time.
I think one of the biggest challenges that we do face is the capacity and having, building out that second phase of the building. The way our campus is designed, there's one academic wing that's really designed for middle school, and then the second academic wing would be designed for high school. And so that is our biggest challenge. And one of the things that the board and I discussed, and Mr. Brocklehurst and I work on, is how do we get the financing to build out that second phase and make that happen so that we can continue to roll students up through 12th grade.
I'll say one more thing now that I'm on. As you work through and with working through with DAC and your different building organizations, and as we collaborate as a district and that partnership, I think that partnership, I agree, is also very important, because if you succeed, we all succeed. And also there's goodness in competition in a community, and there's goodness in collaboration in a community. So as we continue to move forward and as you continue to grow and we continue to have those strong partnerships, I just want to say thank you for being an asset to our community as well.
Thank you, and I'll just say one kind of a comment on that as well. As being a District 38 parent for many years, I just appreciate the staff that works here and how they've served my own children. And to me, this job is about serving kids and serving the community, and I think I just sense that a lot within this district at all levels, and I just appreciate that very much.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you again for being here tonight.
For those who may not have been able to hear for a while or on the live stream, we believe we have the microphones figured out, so thank you for your patience. We will now move on to item C2. It's a board priority number 2 update, and Ms. Wetstein will take over for us with a presentation updating us on priority 2 of the strategic plan.
And good evening. I am happy to be here this evening to provide you an overview of the work that we're doing aligned with Strategic Plan Priority 2. We did do a deep dive, as Dr. Summers mentioned in his update during our work session, so my intent this evening is to provide a summary of the work that's being done. And we did provide some additional student learning results that were requested at the work session, and then to answer any questions that you may have. Priority 2 is about providing a world-class education for every student. And as I came on board as assistant superintendent in July, I heard a lot of feedback about areas we should be focusing on during my initial semester and year, and also considered areas that the board was focusing on in identifying these initiatives within that priority. So we are focusing on providing a high-quality early education as well as pathways at the secondary level to inspire every student's success. And then finally, we are working to improve our professional learning opportunities across the district. One of the areas within our early education program that we are emphasizing is unifying support for our preschool programming. We did, due to some late resignations at the Palmer Lake Early Childhood Center, have to redistribute seats at our other sites at Kilmer Elementary and Bear Creek. And thanks to our partners at Monument Academy, we were also able to place several of our families into their preschool programming, as well as with our partners at Tri-Lakes. We are bringing together our preschool staff as a district for the first time in a long time to collaborate with one another and learn from each other. I had the opportunity to attend our PLC with our preschool staff just last week, and it was led by the teachers and staff themselves, sharing ideas with each other. We will also be launching our Preschool District Advisory Council next week, and we are closely monitoring changes with a new Department of Early Childhood that will bring with it new rules and regulations that we are staying abreast of so that we can implement those for our programming. Also, in our elementary grades, as you know, you approved a new reading curriculum this past spring, so we're working diligently to support our teachers in onboarding those resources. We have 2 resources we're using across the district. One is called Amplify Core Knowledge Language Arts, which is being implemented for its 2nd year at Palmer Lake Elementary School, and then as a first-year implementation at Bear Creek for grades 4 and 5. And then with our other elementary schools, we are onboarding this year Benchmark Education as our core literacy resource. We provided training for all of the teachers across the district that use that curriculum. And we are in the stages of planning support for principals and teachers throughout the year to ensure that we're monitoring that implementation and providing our staff all the support that they need as we learn that new curriculum. This data represents our Acadience reading data results for the last 3 years. These are beginning of year results. Acadience used to be known as Dibble's Next. It's an assessment that helps us predict the likelihood of success for our students as they go through our grade levels. So this assessment is intended to help us take a look at individual students, the skills that they have mastered and the skills that they have not, so that we can put interventions into place to help them catch up. And this was a discussion we had during the work session when we were looking at bringing in a literacy curriculum for our students. Part of that decision was because, as you see here in grades kindergarten through 3rd, there are about 30% of our students entering each year that are not on track to be at grade level by 3rd grade.
Ms. Whitsing, could we trouble you for those attending via streaming that weren't attending our work session to explain the magnitude of the impact of reducing these numbers?
Yes, so the research in education indicates that when students are not reading at grade level, by the time they leave 3rd grade, they are very much more likely to have continued struggles as they go through the education system. So one of the goals that we have as a district, and then as our schools are each identifying measures of their progress within their school-specific work plans, is to increase the percentage of students who are reading on grade level by the time they leave 3rd grade. And as you can see here, we do have some work to do, and these years represented were all impacted by the pandemic, and so we know that our work is even more important due to that impact. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Okay, as we move into middle school and high school, we will be focusing on developing a portrait of a District 38 graduate. And Ms. McAllister will be leading work with our high school students to help us consider what beyond the academics are also important as we develop productive citizens that are leaving our system. So we'll be looking at how our students communicate, problem solve, are contributing community members and empowered individuals. And we'll be able to share our progress on this work sometime as we consider all of the opportunities we want to provide our high school students, this picture here illustrates how our students have opportunities to experience traditional high school coursework, but also experience opportunities in the workforce through career and technical education programs and advanced placement. And we want our students to be a part of the process in helping develop their own pathway and select the opportunities that will help them pursue their passions. We're also continuing to support curriculum adoption processes at our middle and high schools this year. We are in the very beginning stages of implementing new high school world language curriculum, and we're currently looking at what resources teachers came together to develop themselves over the summer and what we still may need to supplement with those. We are also in year 2 of implementation of new math curriculum at the middle school level, so we know that we need to continue to support teachers with training and professional learning communities there. And then we will be looking at our health resources this year as well to see how they may align with our current academic standards and what possible new resources we may need to suggest. Finally, we are continuing to develop our professional learning opportunities for our workforce. Miss Jenny Day is leading work to develop professional learning communities with our middle and high schools. And we also are looking to strengthen our teacher induction program, which is the program that onboards all of the new teachers to our district. And we just found out today that we have been approved by the Colorado Department of Education to offer an insight program to support our new principals and administrators for their continued licensure. Finally, I'm not going to go through the additional data results that we've provided at your request unless you have specific questions, but at the board's request, we did include school-specific results for all of our high school state assessments this past spring. What questions may I answer for you?
I have one. If you don't mind going back to the slide, it's the slide before the multiple pathways with the portrait of a D38 graduate. So, and not to put you or Mr. Frampton on the spot, but last month we had the presentation on Priority 1 and social emotional learning as it applies to our students. And we've had some discussion of this as a board in terms of the priorities don't stand alone. They often overlap. And the social emotional component, where would you see that it fits in the portrait? Or how would you articulate it?
I think, like you said with the priorities, I'm not sure it stands alone in one of these areas. So when we look at self-advocacy, when we look at perseverance, but also adaptability, flexibility, all of those components fit into how we take care of ourselves and our own mental health and wellness. And so interpersonal communication and connection. So personally, I wouldn't see it standing alone, but be a thread throughout. And I know our students will be able to give us really good insights on where that fits within how we want to send off our graduates as well.
The strategic plan and then the integrated about it, and for the community to know that all of these are merging and overlapping in such a way that does provide holistic of a D38 graduate that may not be complete, obviously, this is a fluid document or representation. So I just
yes, these are what the Colorado Department of Education recommends, but we want to take these and make them our own based on student input.
Go ahead, Mr. Schwartz.
I just wanted to thank the team for doing this work, not because it's beautiful slideware, but because it gives us a crisp view of what good looks like, and where we're going, why we're going where we're going, and what we get when we get there. And ultimately, that's what we're here to do, so thank you guys.
add that the next slide with the footprints is somewhat of a lot more there than what just first meets the eye. So people might want to take a look at that and see all the options that are there for our D38 kids. There are many combinations of routes that they can go.
I have a question.
Sure.
Is our work session still being streamed?
Yes.
Okay, so folks can go on and see this presentation?
Yes.
From the work session. I would encourage anybody that's watching tonight to go onto the work session because it really was a great presentation and really explained this multiple pathways and the artistic work that went into it and what everything from ASVAB to CLEP means and what the program offerings, and answers a lot of questions on where families can get the resources to find out the multiple pathways for our students. And I said it once and I'll say it again. What I really liked about this is it really shows how our D38s, how we support our D38 students and how we prepare them to enter our system and how we're preparing them when they enter our system. And our system, I mean our school district. So thank you again.
It was a team effort. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving on to agenda item C3, policy update. I'm going to pass to Dr.
Okay, so helping me out with this portion of the agenda will be Amber Wetstein, Rick Frampton, and Kristen Stieber. And what we've prepared for you is a presentation that corresponds to the matrix that we shared with you at the work session. And as we dive into more of the specifics, being that this is our first reading of the policies that are in front of you for your review this evening, we just wanted to, and we're going to do this in some semblance of order. So I believe we're starting with I policies, moving then to G, and then wrapping it up with our J. Thank you. And so what you can count on us for is a summary of ultimately what the recommendation or change is, whether it's coming from, in some cases, a need to legally update and review our policies as we do every through our work with CASB, or if it's coming from a position either from a board member or a staff member, or it can really come from anybody as to any recommendation that may be coming forward with respective policies. So there is a few new policies here this evening as well. And what I think the best way to do this is to start with the initial presenter. So I believe that's Amber first. She'll roll through these I policy recommendations. We can talk about it, answer any questions that you may have, and then move on to the next. So with that, Ms. Wetstein.
Okay, so these are the I policies that are proposed either as new or revised this evening. First, IKE. This policy provides a framework for decision-making about the retention, acceleration, and promotion of students aligned with Strategic Priority 2. This is a new policy proposal that will help us have clear and consistent processes for making decisions related to specifically retention and acceleration of students. It is required that if a district adopts this policy that we have an additional regulation attached to it. So you will see both of those new policy proposals in your packet. The next policy, IMB, proposes revisions to our policy on teaching controversial materials and topics, and the main language change that is being proposed includes tenets which prohibit teaching that any student is inherently superior or inferior to another. Do you want to have questions and discussion after each section?
If that's okay, that way we go one at a time or a couple at a time. So any questions from our board, comments, etc.?
I think I'm on. Where
where was that language derived from? In
IMB?
Yes.
So I can address that initially. That was through, and this dates back to the summer, some language that was initially proposed by our president, Mr. Taylor, and then received some legal review to make it a little more precise and consistent with policy language that you can also find within policy AC, our non-discrimination policy. So I can speak briefly to the fact that there was some consideration about whether this additional language would align better within policy AC, and the legal review that we received suggested that it wasn't necessary to necessarily modify AC, but that it would be perhaps better situated within the context of the controversial topic policy. So that's my best summary of it, at least at this point, considering that Mr. Taylor isn't with us this evening to go that much further.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions on what we've covered so far? All right, carry on.
So policy GBI is a new policy, and it's being proposed to really how we use CBI, FBI data when a individual is arrested or there is a charge. We're provided with information, and we are legally required to handle it in a certain manner. So the policy goes along with, or really we learned from a recent audit about all of the things that have to be put into place when we're using that confidential information. So recommending that we take the CASB policy and adopt it as is. And that also ensures that we are meeting our requirements from CBI, FBI. The next policy is a GCI. Yep, give it back to Amber.
So this next set of policies all support the work that we are doing to develop our professional learning in District 38, aligned with Priority 3, but also in alignment with Priority 2 that I spoke about earlier this evening. So we are looking to adopt new policies. These proposals are based very closely on the CASB recommendations.
So going back to GDG, this was a policy that in our retreat we had briefly mentioned that in Human Resources we provide you with a monthly listing of all the substitutes that have been hired as kind of an ongoing item. And one of the things that was in the policy is that we were to print and give the policy to every new hire. So just as we take a look at our onboarding and streamlining processes, that is not necessary. So just trying to take CASB language and this was an added statement that we had to do. So just cleaning it up.
Question for that one. So would you say that this makes the process more efficient?
I would say so. I would say so. Things have moved electronically, and we're just trying to streamline.
So quick comment, if I may. Just for those streaming in or that weren't on our work session, if you don't mind, I'll take a quarter step back to bring this full cycle. This seems incredibly detail-y in almost at minutia level, but it actually is important, and the rationale behind the team doing it is it's been a long time since we looked at the policies that govern what we do and how we do it, and it's long overdue to update them. So thank you guys for doing this diligent work, but for those that are wondering why we're spending valuable cycles on it, it's because it's long overdue, and it's necessary maintenance.
Thank you, Ron. Good evening. We're going to talk about three of the J policies, JLCB, JLCD, JLCDB, and their accompanying regulations and exhibits. All three of these recommendations to you tonight are based out of a change in legislation and in the law. So we're required to make many of these changes to our board policy. JLCB is the immunization policy, and we are recommending that we adopt the CASB policies with some minor changes to them. And we're also making a recommendation that we stick to the minimum of vaccinations or immunizations required by the policy and not expand it, even though that is an option that you can consider if you'd like to. And the minimum right now is just the MMR immunization. This also specifies how we communicate to the state and our community our immunization rates. Any questions on the immunization?
I'm going to ask the question because you know the public is going to ask us. COVID is not, the COVID vaccine is not included in this.
That is correct. COVID is not part of JLCB or any other regulation at this time. Okay, JLCD is also aligned with CASB's recommendations. The primary change to JLCD is that the new law allows for self-administration of medications when it's appropriate for the student. Previously, we allowed self-administration of medications at the secondary level only, and this will expand that opportunity into our elementary schools for a variety of different reasons. We're recommending that we combine the 4 exhibits that we currently have on policy, JLCD E1, E2A, E2B, and E3 into one document, which would just be JLCDE. Currently, we have 4 different exhibits. Primarily, for the reason we have one for self-administration elementary, we have one for adult administration elementary, and then the same 2 for secondary. So that's why we have 4 exhibits currently. And the current language allows us to combine those into one exhibit that will work K-12. And then finally, JLCDB is the medical marijuana law in which we've had on the books, and we've allowed a child's care provider to administer medical marijuana. The change to the law now allows for a staff member to volunteer to administer medical marijuana if the staff member does in fact volunteer. There's currently a JLCDBR in our policy. I'm recommending that we remove that regulation because it's fairly prescriptive and not necessary. And then we would add JLCDBE as exhibits. There's actually 2 versions for that. One would be if the caretaker's administering medical marijuana on our campuses, and the second is if there's a staff volunteer. Any questions about that? Great. Thank you.
That was it.
Thank you all. Any further comments from board members?
So we'll have a chance to have a final discussion on this before we vote next month, too.
That's correct. This is a first reading, and next month would be the second and vote.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all
Thank
for
you
your
so
time
much.
and expertise.
And thank you for putting the work into this, too.
And we will now invite Ms. Kitty Overton up for agenda item C4, financial planning and analysis.
And then where's the PowerPoint? Okay. Okay. All right. Good evening, Dr. Summers, members of the board. For the financial portion of the meeting, have you all had a chance to look at this month's reports for student enrollment and the financials? And do you have any questions on those? I will say the only main point of note in the financials is the added expenditure for the extra payroll run that we did in August, but you are all aware of that. And the enrollment numbers we continue to watch as we get closer to October count date. You have asked that we share with you a brief summary of how the district has benefited from the COVID grant money that's been available to school district. I'm trying to find my PowerPoint here, bear with me. And there we go. So this presentation is meant to provide a brief overview of the COVID grant dollars that District 38 has been had the benefit of, and how we're continuing to leverage those dollars to benefit students. As we go through the slides, we'll get into a little bit more detail of how each of these grants has benefited District 38, or how we might utilize those funds going forward. There are basically 4 grants. CRF was the first initial monies given to school districts, the initial spring outbreak of the pandemic. Those funds have already been accounted for and received. You can see the award period runs from March of 2020 through December of 2020. But we actually would have had until the end of December to spend those monies. But as I mentioned, those monies have all been accounted for. And then ESSER 1, also, we've already accounted for that. The money has been requested from CDE and not yet received. I do expect it to be received during the month of September. And then ESSER 2 is in the budgeting process. We've submitted our budget and are awaiting approval of that budget from CDE. And once we have final approval on the budget, we'll be able to submit some expenditures for reimbursement on that grant. And then the final ESSER 3 dollars have been awarded in 2 allocations. And so I just split it out there the way that CDE provided that grant information to us. And that grant we have until the end of September of 2024 to utilize those monies. So the first grant, CRF, which is the one that we've already fully accounted for, these are just some of the allowable uses of those monies. I'm not going to read each one, but as you would expect, things like cleaning and sanitizing and providing for social distancing and those types of things. This next graph will show kind of how we utilize those funds. You'll see a big portion of the funds were used to address lost learning time, and then technology needs and supplies. And there's always the carve out for Monument Academies portion of the grants. ESSER 1 is the smaller piece of the grant money, but it was primarily intended to be used to help us get reopened in the fall of 2020. Yeah, 2020. This is how District 38 used those funds. There is a small carve out for St. Peter. That was a requirement of ESSER 1. It's not a requirement for ESSERs 2 or 3. They removed that requirement because there are other funding sources available now to private schools within our boundaries. So again, we used a portion of the money for lost learning time, technology and software needs, and then of course Monument Academy's allocation. ESSER 2 is in the budget approval process currently. The allowable uses are very similar across all 3 of the ESSER grants. And at any point, you could always go to the CDE website, follow the links in this presentation to get more information on the allowable usage. ESSER 2 budget, this is how we've allocated it, and I expect to get approval from CDE soon without any revisions to this. There's the Monument Academy allocation. a large portion going to additional technology and software needs to support our kids every day in their classes. And then we do have that carve out for air quality building improvements, which is part of the Schneider contract. And then the salaries and benefits piece, a portion of that is funding Jenny Day's position in the important work she's doing for the district as I think her title is Leadership and Learning Coach. And then some of those salary and benefits were to maintain some positions that we lost funding for in Title I.
Can I ask a question? Can you elaborate on tech and software?
The district continues to buy devices for kids to support their needs in possibly distance learning and just facilitating that. There's a lot of additional software needs associated with helping kids with those needs in the classroom that they may not have had prior to the pandemic. Some of those are, I'm trying to think of the names of them, but some of the online learning programs that facilitate student learning.
One of the things that we requested from schools was a list of different programs or software packages that would address some of those different learning needs. So that was identified by teachers, vetted by our team in learning services, and it just enabled us to be able to be more responsive to those needs. So it's actually helped us accelerate in some ways available software that has not been in prior years able to be as utilized.
Yes, and in talking to Chris Mack, our technology manager, he mentioned that the technology piece of these purchases, sometimes these softwares need a little bit more vibrant device to run properly, and so we wanted to be able to maintain those devices for both staff and students.
And then the air quality building improvements, are those the ones, are there any additional ones to the ones that have been discussed in the Schneider Electric contract? Or
This money is all dedicated to the Schneider contract.
Cool. Okay.
Quick point of clarification question. In the spirit of transparency, can you provide a couple examples of lost learning time? Where those are things we spend on?
Yeah,
these funds?
CDE provided a formula for districts across the state to use in order to address lost learning time. It basically calculated the number of days students were not in the classroom and allowed us to sort of offset the cost of that learning loss with the COVID dollars to it offset in the general fund what we would have had to pay those salaries and benefits, where we might have had to make adjustments to the budget going into the 2021 school year. Does that help? ESSER 3 is $2.75 million to our district. And again, the allowable uses are very similar as you might see in ESSERs 1 and 2, but ESSER 3 has an additional provision where we are required to develop and seek public comment on the plans for the safe return to in-person instruction and continuity of services. So the plan right now for District 38 is to conduct a stakeholder survey to develop and seek input to that regard. We will also, if that's the beginning point, we will also continue to gather input through direct contact with groups such as DAC, the Financial Advisory Committee, student council groups, and other community organizations. We also often ask for input from our staff during professional development and planning meetings. In fact, they had an opportunity to make suggestions to the survey itself. And I think I can show you. The survey has gone live on the website just as we speak tonight, and it'll be up on the website for about 2 weeks. We will also target some community groups that might be able to send it to their own constituents and stakeholders so that we can gather additional input, not just from our district staff and families, but also from other interested parties. And I can give you a quick look at the survey, if I can find it here. well, goodness. I know you had it up here for me.
There you go. Go up. Just go up.
Oh,
you
there it
go.
is. Yep.
And then scroll down.
So the survey itself, there's a brief explanation here as to why we're conducting the survey. And then as you go into the survey, it's going to ask just for some basic demographical information from the person taking the survey. And then what we've done is aligned the questions to the strategic plan. So each priority has a question and some answers that the survey taker can rank in order of priority. So this is just an example of priority 1 and cultivating healthy, safe, and welcoming schools. And then we continue through each of the priorities. And so the survey member can simply just rank each in whatever order they would like to.
So just to clarify, the money has not been allocated yet.
That is correct. We're still just beginning the budget development stage, so there's a lot of work to do to figure out the best way to use those resources.
And just to clarify, those dollars have to be spent on specific, it has to be qualified specific items or programs.
Yes, again, there's a pretty significant list of allowable uses. So the survey will help us determine, the areas that we most want to focus on, and then as we start to develop that budget, we can try and hit all the areas that are top priority for the district and the best use for those funds for our students. And then finally, I wanted to show just a comparison to other districts in our county to kind of give some framework around the allocation of these funds. These ESSER funds are allocated based on the Title I formula. So Lewis Palmer's per pupil funding, if you look at all 4 grants together, it comes to approximately $1,000 per student. The reason some of the other districts have higher funding per pupil is because of the Title I funding formula being applied to those grants. This graph is a depiction of, in dollars, of the immensity of the funds being given to educators throughout the state of Colorado, and just showing the district's portion of El Paso County's total funding and our portion of the state of Colorado total funding. And that is all I have on that. Do you have any further questions on ESSER?
Wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
I want to say kudos to I like the idea of doing this survey for the ESSER $3 because, like I said again, I'll say it again, is you get a lot of voices, but it's the best way to get a comprehensive idea, and it's the right thing to do. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, and again, I think it's just the beginning point. There's still a lot of work to do to figure out the right allocation of those monies. And it will have to go through the budget approval with CDE as well.
You may have said it already, but how long is the survey open?
Good question.
Approximately 2 weeks. Through October 4th is our plan.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anything else? Thank you.
I think so, thank you.
Oh, wait, Kitty, I did have a question. Sorry, I'm going to call you back. I'm so sorry. Thank you so much for coming back. Real quick on the district enrollment, I forgot to ask, when it shows Pleck and Palmer Lake Elementary School and that change in student enrollment, is that the Pleck building is being reflected in that?
Yeah,
That just seems like a lot of
you can see
students.
some of the numbers going into the other schools, and a portion of them also went to the local Monument preschool.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to clarify.
That's exactly right.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, it's almost a 1-to-1. I don't know that we didn't lose maybe a student or two at Palmer Lake included in that 43 or that 46 number, but the vast majority, almost all of those kiddos are Pleck.
Any other comments? Item C5, approval of the consent agenda.
Bless you.
I will make a recommended motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
We'll second the motion.
Any comments, questions, concerns regarding the consent agenda?
I don't this time.
None heard. Ms. Wood?
Aye.
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 I believe that puts us at our final agenda item E1, which is adjournment. So thank you, fellow board members.
One reminder to the board, we have 2 dates coming up from the Colorado Association of School Boards, our delegate assembly at the end of October. And I should have actually made a motion to put this on the end of the agenda, so I apologize. Do we want to continue to do the same thing we've done in the past, or do we want somebody else want to go? Looking for that date exactly.
I believe you're talking about the one in October.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Wood, do you have the
Yep.
CASB dates for October legislative
Pulling that.
assembly?
I have that on my calendar.
Miss Upchurch, that's the one that you attended last year, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. As I don't know if we want to see if there's a consensus, but I would be fine with you going again.
Yes. I already have that on my calendar set aside, but if there's anybody else that's wanting to.
There have been a couple years, Ms. Upchurch and I have been there together, but I'm out of town that week, so I'm not able to attend.
I second Mr. Clausen's motion.
Are you available?
Yes, I am.
So we can register Ms. Upchurch as our designee.
As our delegate, all right.
And then Vicki, have you sent out the
Appreciate it.
notification as far as when the CASB annual training is in December? Is that on our calendars?
It is December 2, 3, and 4,
Okay.
a Thursday through a Saturday.
Okay, perfect.
And you need notification from us by which date? There's a,
Thursday this week? Okay.
yes. Thank you, Ms. Upchurch, for bringing that to our attention. I will loop back around to item E1, adjournment of the Board of Education meeting for this evening.
I'll second.
Thank you.
How did you get out of that one?
We are adjourned.
Thank you, Ms. Phillips.
Thank you for running a